the bully who mocked my disability became my boss, and he's forcing me to mentor his son. I never expected to see Devin Bradley again. Certainly not like this. Not in a starched suit, leaning against the conference room table with that same smirk I remembered from high school. Yet here I was, adjusting my grip on my cane while he greeted the department with an air of confidence bordering on arrogance. Devin had come waltzing back into my life after nearly 2 decades, announcing he was our new regional director, my new boss. The same Devin who spent senior year mocking my limp in front of the entire basketball team. The same Devin who dubbed me Crip Chris, a nickname that somehow clung to me for weeks until a teacher finally told him to stop. The same Devin who, in some of my worst nightmares, sneers and says, "Walk faster, freak," while I stumble through the hallway, face burning with shame. I couldn't believe it. 20 years was plenty of time to change, of course. Maybe Devin had grown up, left behind his teenage cruelty. Maybe he barely even remembered me. That's what I told myself, even as my stomach churned with anxiety. Sure, I had a stable job now, working as a lead analyst for an up-and-coming financial consulting firm. Sure, I had learned to live with a disability that required a cane, a result of a bone condition I was born with, finding ways to adapt and excel in a demanding field. But deep inside, seeing him again made me feel like that insecure teenager all over again, the one who dreaded the school bus because Devin might be there with his pack of snickering friends. The day Devin arrived for his official introduction, the office was abuzz with curiosity. Our old regional director had retired unexpectedly, leaving the role open. Rumors swirled about the new guy being a real go-getter from out of state, a change agent who'd spent years climbing the corporate ladder. My heart froze when I heard his name. After all, Devin Bradley wasn't exactly common, but a sick part of me thought, it can't be the same jerk who kicked my cane out from under me in 10th grade. It must be someone else. Then he walked into the conference room, scanning the group of about 30 staff. My mouth went dry. He gave a big speech about his passion for data-driven results and synergy, sprinkling in corporate buzzwords that made me roll my eyes. Halfway through, he locked eyes with me. For a flicker of a second, confusion rippled across his features, like he recognized me but couldn't place where from. Then he recovered, nodded briefly, and continued. I sat through that entire presentation in a fugue state, responding only when someone nudged me or asked if I was all right. Afterward, we broke into small sessions and Devin was whisked away by upper management. I tried to slip back to my desk, hiding behind my cubicle partition. But not 10 minutes later, I heard that too familiar voice behind me, smooth and confident. "Chris, right?" Slowly, I turned in my office chair. There he stood, wearing a crisp navy blue suit, probably designer, from the look of it, hair slicked back, a watch that likely cost more than my monthly mortgage. But even with his veneer of corporate success, I saw the same cocky tilt of his head, the same glimmer of arrogance in his eyes. "Yes," I managed, making sure my cane was within easy reach. "Chris Jenkins." He extended a hand, which I reluctantly shook. "Devin," he said, unnecessarily. "I wanted to introduce myself personally to some of our key team members. I've heard good things about your work." He paused, his gaze flicking to my cane. Then something changed in his eyes, and I realized he did remember me. The polite smile faltered. In that split second, a swirl of emotions flitted across his face, surprise, guilt, maybe triumph. It was like he was thinking, "Oh, it's that guy." "Thanks," I said, withdrawing my hand. My palm felt clammy. "Been here about 5 years leading the analytics group. It's good to meet you again." I couldn't stop myself from adding that last word, as if to poke him, remind him we weren't strangers. His eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Again?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Ravendale High, class of 2003. We had a couple classes together." I forced my tone to remain neutral. Devin blinked, then gave a short laugh, obviously forced. "Wow, small world. Right, yeah. Your face looked familiar. Sorry, it's been so long I almost didn't." "It's fine," I cut in stiffly, my patience wearing thin. Those years were a blur for a lot of us, I'm sure. I wanted to see if he'd acknowledge what he'd done back then, but he just nodded, his expression tight. "Anyway, looking forward to working with you," he said, then pivoted and walked away. For a few days, that was the extent of my interaction with Devin. He spent most of his time reorganizing upper management, implementing new workflows, and scheduling departmental reviews. The tension in the office soared. People fretted about layoffs or restructuring. I tried to avoid him, focusing on my projects. Late one afternoon, though, I got an email marked high priority. It was from Devin, summoning me to his new corner office. My heart thumped in my chest, but I had no choice. I grabbed my cane, squared my shoulders, and walked down the corridor lined with glass-walled offices, each one reminding me of how big the corporate ladder was. Devin's door was open, and he beckoned me in with a broad, almost paternal smile. "Chris, come in." He gestured to a chair. I eased into it carefully, setting my cane aside. My leg was aching that day, but I tried not to show it. He sat behind a large mahogany desk, leaning forward. "I've been reviewing your performance metrics, your team leadership, and I have to say I'm impressed. You're a top performer here." I swallowed. "Thank you. I do my best." He nodded, flipping through a folder. "Your analytics team consistently meets deadlines and your turnover rate is low. That's good. Actually, I have a special project in mind and I'd like you to lead it. It's more specialized, though, than your typical assignments." Something about the way he said specialized made me wary. "Sure," I said slowly. "What's the project?" Devin clasped his hands. "Well, my teenage son Carter is going through a mentorship program. Part of the requirement is that he shadows someone in a professional environment to get a sense of real-world corporate culture. Normally, I'd do it myself, but as the regional director, my schedule is insane." He gave me a charismatic grin. "Plus, I want him to see a variety of roles. Since you're a strong performer, I think you'd be perfect to mentor him." Mentor his son? My mind whirled. So the same guy who used to jeer at me to walk faster wanted me to show his kid the ropes? My reflexive response was to say no, but he was my boss now, with the power to influence my position. "That's an honor, but I'm not sure I'm the right choice," I said carefully. "I already have a full load of responsibilities." Devin waved that away. "We'll adjust your workload accordingly. Carter's only 16, so it's more of a short-term shadowing. Maybe a few weeks max. Show him around, let him sit in on some of your project planning meetings, teach him how to handle spreadsheets. I'd handle it myself, but I genuinely think you'd be better. You're known for your patience and thoroughness." My pulse pounded. This felt like a trap, or at least a terribly awkward situation. But refusing might sabotage my standing. I took a slow breath, my mind flicking back to teenage Devin, rolling his eyes at my limp. It felt bitterly ironic that now I'd be guiding his offspring, presumably in how to be successful and respectful in a professional environment. "If that's what the company needs, I can do it," I said quietly. Devin beamed. "Excellent. I'll have HR finalize the mentorship paperwork. Carter will start next week. Appreciate your cooperation, Chris." He stood, offering a handshake. I reluctantly accepted. His grip was firm, borderline crushing, like he wanted to remind me who was in charge. As I walked out, my cane tapping the tile, I seethed inside. Part of me wanted to storm right back and tell Devin to find another mentor for Carter, but bills needed paying, and I'd fought too hard for this position to risk it now. I resolved to be professional, treat Carter fairly, and keep contact with Devin minimal. Maybe Carter would be a decent kid, and this wouldn't be so bad. That night, I tossed and turned, memories swirling. Devin's mocking voice, high school hallways, the humiliation of dropping my books when he kicked my cane. I remembered the worst incident. I was carrying a tray in the cafeteria, and he sneered, "Hey, slowpoke," then bumped into me so my tray went flying, food splattering everywhere. Students laughed, and I wanted to vanish. I never told the principal I was too scared. I tried to forget it over the years, but that fear and shame had never fully left. The following Monday, Carter arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. My co-worker, Janet, poked her head over the cubicle partition to whisper, "Some kid's at reception looking for you. Says he's your new intern or something." Sighing, I stood with my cane and trudged to the front desk. There, a lanky teenager in a button-down shirt and slacks perched on a chair, flipping through his phone. He had Devin's dark hair, but it was shaggy, flopping into his eyes. He also had a quiet, bored expression that reminded me of teenage Devin's arrogance. When I introduced myself, Carter gave me a polite nod. "Hi, Mr. Jenkins. Dad said I should watch how you do your job. Guess I'm your shadow." He didn't say it rudely, exactly, but there was a certain disinterest in his tone. Call me Chris, I replied, forcing a smile. We'll get you settled at a spare desk near my team. Did your father mention what you'll be working on? Carter shrugged. He said I'd learn about analyzing data, presenting reports, that kind of stuff. I'm supposed to log hours for my mentorship project. He tapped his phone. I have a digital form I fill out every day. If you could sign off on it, that'd be great. I guided him to an empty cubicle we used for temp workers. My cane was in plain sight, of course, and Carter's gaze flicked to it, but he didn't comment. Fine, I thought. Maybe he's not as rude as his dad was. Let's just get through this. After setting him up, I gave him a quick overview of the company's software and some of the tasks we handle, collecting client data, generating performance metrics, interpreting results for strategy sessions. Carter followed along, though he seemed more interested in texting friends than in the intricacies of data analysis. I had to keep reminding him to put his phone away. By lunch, I felt mildly irritated. This wasn't how I wanted to spend my day, babysitting a bored teenager. But I also reminded myself that maybe Carter had no choice. Maybe Devin forced him into this. I tried to be patient, explaining concepts. Carter asked a few half-hearted questions, mostly about whether we used any cool AI stuff. I told him about some automation tools we were piloting. He nodded vaguely. The first real friction came that afternoon during a departmental meeting. I invited Carter along to observe. We were discussing an upcoming project for a large client. My colleague Ebony was presenting some slides. At one point, I got up to discuss a data visualization method. My leg was hurting, so I leaned heavily on my cane. As I hobbled to the front, Carter snickered. Just a tiny sound, barely audible. But I heard it. Immediately, my stomach clenched. I forced myself to keep my voice level, not to let my old insecurities show. I gave the explanation, ignoring the sudden flush in my cheeks. Once done, I returned to my seat. Carter didn't look at me. Maybe it was just an innocent cough or stifled laugh about something else I tried to rationalize. Yet the old fear gnawed at me, like father, like son. After the meeting, Ebony frowned at me. You okay? You look upset. I shook my head. I'm fine, just tired. But my mind kept replaying that snicker. I decided to give Carter the benefit of the doubt for now. The next few days, I tried to remain calm, showing him around, introducing him to colleagues. He seemed polite enough on the surface, though a bit dismissive. He didn't mention my cane or my limp, which was a relief. Maybe, I imagined the snicker. Then, midweek, we had a fiasco. One of our clients was upset about some data they claimed was inaccurate. Devin demanded an emergency meeting with me, Ebony, and Carter in attendance, presumably so Carter could learn about crisis management. I arrived in the conference room to find Devin pacing, phone pressed to his ear. He waved me in, ignoring Ebony and Carter. After he finished the call, Devin said, "We need to fix this immediately. The client is threatening to pull their contract. Ebony, you handle the data recheck. Chris, coordinate with legal and the client's CFO. Carter, you watch and learn, son. This is how real business happens." Carter rolled his eyes. Dad, I'm supposed to just observe, right? I'm not doing any calls, am I? Devin shot him a glare. When I say watch, that means actively watch. Take notes. Understand how they handle it so you can apply those lessons to your future endeavors. Clear? Carter sighed. Yes, sir. I tried to diffuse the tension. Let's get started. Ebony, let's rerun the raw data from last quarter. Carter, could you open a new spreadsheet to track changes? You'll get a sense of how we do it. We spent the next hour working through the data. Carter typed slowly, occasionally missing entire lines because he was back on his phone. I corrected him gently. Devin hovered, arms folded, occasionally barking instructions. Ebony muttered under her breath about the big boss micromanaging. Eventually, we found the mistake, some mismatch of columns from the client's data import. Ebony coded a fix, I prepped an apology statement, and Devin told her to watch how I delivered it on the call. But as I dialed the CFO, my leg cramped again. I shifted my weight, adjusting my cane. Carter let out a tiny snort or maybe a suppressed laugh. This time, Ebony gave him a sharp glance. I pretended not to notice, focusing on the phone conversation. With a calm professionalism, I explained the error, assured the CFO we had corrected it, and offered some complimentary analytics to smooth things over. The CFO accepted, crisis averted. Devin nodded in approval. Ebony sighed in relief. As we left the conference room, Ebony cornered me. Hey, Is it just me, or is that kid mocking your cane? She said softly, a spark of anger in her eyes. I caught him smirking. I didn't want to cause a scene. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I might have noticed something similar, I admitted. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels that way. Ebony frowned, crossing her arms. What's up with that? Doesn't he realize that's inappropriate? Should we talk to HR? The idea of going to HR about my boss's son made me cringe. Let me see if it happens again, I said. I don't want to escalate unless I'm sure. Maybe it's a coincidence. She nodded, but her expression said she didn't believe in coincidences. All right, but watch your back, Chris. That evening, I was staying late to finish some extra work. Carter had gone home earlier. He was only slated for half days. My phone buzzed with a text from Devin. Please see me in my office before you leave. I sighed, shutting down my computer. My leg ached from sitting too long. I hobbled to Devin's office, knocked. He called out, "Come in." He was behind his desk, tie loosened, rummaging through paperwork. "Chris, thanks for stopping by," he said, not looking up right away. "Wanted to chat about Carter's progress. How's he doing?" I paused. Honestly, he seems uninterested. He goes on his phone a lot. I'm trying to keep him engaged, but he'll shape up, Devin interrupted with a dismissive wave. It's typical teenage stuff. I'm more concerned that he said you're not giving him enough real tasks. He wants more hands-on experience, or so he claims. I blinked. That contradicted Carter's own behavior. Well, that's surprising. He's been reluctant to do even the small tasks I assign, like note-taking. But if he wants more, I can give him a few data sets to practice. Devin nodded. Do that. Also, I'd like you to personally evaluate his performance for his mentorship forms. You'll sign off on them weekly, grading his effort and growth. I want you to be thorough. Give me a copy too. A wave of unease washed over me. This meant I'd be directly responsible for passing or failing Carter. In a normal internship, that might be standard, but here it felt loaded, like Devin wanted me to either praise his son or risk his wrath. Sure, I said, forcing neutrality. Devin leaned back in his chair, studying me. Chris, I remember you from high school, he said suddenly. My breath caught. Here it was. I wasn't sure at first, but then it clicked. We weren't exactly friends, were we? A wry smile tugged at his lips. No, I said, heart pounding. We weren't. He drummed his fingers on the desk. I recall, I might have given you a hard time back then. I was kind of an idiot, to be honest. If I said or did anything that upset you, well, I hope we can leave it in the past. His tone was casual, but I heard the subtext. Let's pretend it never happened, okay? I stared at him, anger and disbelief swirling in my gut. After years of torment, that was it? He was basically excusing himself with a half-hearted, I was an idiot. But I forced myself to remain professional. It was a long time ago, I said quietly, though my voice shook. We've both moved on. He exhaled, almost in relief. Good. Because I want us to have a smooth working relationship, and this mentorship with Carter is part of that. He pressed his palms together, leaning forward. Look, my son's future is important to me. If you help him succeed, I'll make sure your contributions here are recognized. There it was, a subtle bribe. My stomach churned. I understand, I managed. I'll do my best to teach him. Devin nodded, satisfied. Great. Thanks, Chris. I'll see you tomorrow. It was clearly a dismissal. I grabbed my cane and left, fury smoldering inside me. So he half apologizes, but he's basically telling me to do what he wants or else. I limped to my car, every step throbbing. By the time I sank into the driver's seat, I had a splitting headache. The next week was rough. I tried giving Carter more hands-on tasks, but he barely put in effort. Meanwhile, Devin hovered, constantly asking how Carter was doing, reminding me to log his progress. Carter made a show of sighing whenever I asked him to do something. He'd do it haphazardly, get bored, and pull out his phone. One afternoon, Ebony caught him snapping a photo of me from behind while I was leaning on my cane, but when she confronted him, he claimed he was just texting a friend. Ebony told me about it later, and I felt ill. Was he taking pictures to mock me with his friends? I confronted Carter calmly. Hey, Ebony said you were taking photos. If that's part of your project, let me know, but otherwise, it's not appropriate. Carter gave me a wide-eyed stare. What? I was just messing around on Snapchat. I wasn't taking pictures of you. Chill out, man. His disrespectful tone grated on me, but I forced myself not to snap. Keep it professional, I said, and keep your phone off unless you need it for the project. He rolled his eyes. Fine. It all came to a head the following Thursday. Carter was supposed to present a small analysis he'd done on a sample data set, as practice. I had helped him structure it, but he was supposed to finish the final slides on his own. When the time came to show Ebony and me, the slides were a mess, typos, incomplete graphs, random clip art. Ebony looked unimpressed. I asked Carter to walk us through it, but he fumbled, admitting he hadn't really done the reading. Ebony gently pointed out this was subpar work. Carter shrugged, smirking. Who cares? It's not like this is a real job. Dad's paying me to do a mentorship. I stiffened. Actually, this is an opportunity for you to learn real skills. Your father expects a certain standard. Carter scoffed. My father expects me to show up, that's it. Ebony's jaw clenched. I forced a calm tone. You might want to take this more seriously, Carter. People here are putting effort into teaching you. It's disrespectful to blow it off. He gave me a sidelong glance, eyes flicking to my cane. What would you know about disrespect, he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for me to catch. Ebony bristled. Excuse me? I said softly. Carter shrugged, but I saw a flicker of cruelty in his eyes. I just mean it's not my fault you can't keep up. Whenever we're walking around the office, you slow me down. It's kind of pointless anyway. Dad just wants me to pass some stupid mentorship requirement. Ebony shot to her feet. How dare you? I put a hand on her arm, my stomach twisting. It's fine, Ebony, I said, though I was shaking inside. Turning to Carter, I spoke quietly. You're entitled to your opinions, but if you can't respect me and the team, I'll end this mentorship. Understood? Carter shrugged again, eyes cold. Sure, whatever. Ebony glared at him. The meeting's over, she said. You can go. He grabbed his phone and strolled out, not an ounce of remorse on his face. I let out a shaky breath, feeling my legs spasm. Ebony gently touched my shoulder. Chris, I'm so sorry. That little jerk. We should report him. He's basically harassing you about your disability. I sank into a chair, feeling drained. He didn't say anything explicitly about the disability, but we know the implication. Ebony shook her head. Doesn't matter. We can't let him treat you like that. Boss's son or not, that's harassment. I'll back you up if you want to go to HR. But going to HR meant tangling with Devin directly. He was my boss, and he'd made it clear he wanted me to handle Carter quietly. I appreciate it, Ebony, I said slowly. Let me talk to Devin first. If he won't address Carter's behavior, then I'll consider HR. Her lips pursed. All right, but be careful. That afternoon, I requested a quick meeting with Devin. He ushered me in, looking vaguely annoyed. What's up, Chris? I'm slammed with calls. I took a seat, cane across my lap. We need to discuss Carter's mentorship. He's disrespectful, doesn't do the tasks, and he made a disparaging comment about me and my mobility. Devin's expression darkened. Are you sure it wasn't just teenage humor? He can be a bit insensitive, but I doubt he meant to offend you. My chest tightened. He's mocking me, Devin. This can't continue. I'm telling you as his mentor and your employee, it's unacceptable. Either you talk to him or I have to escalate this. Devin frowned, tapping a pen on his desk. Look, Carter's going through a rough patch. His mother and I divorced recently, and I'm trying to keep him on track. He's acting out, sure, but do you really need to blow this up? Maybe you two just need to find common ground. Rage simmered. He's mocking my disability, which you used to do too. Did you teach him that? My voice shook with old anger. Devin's eyes flicked wide with surprise, then anger. You know, Chris, I came here in good faith, apologized for my teenage mistakes. It's not fair to hold that over me. Carter's his own person. I stood, gripping my cane tightly. Apologizing means you don't keep condoning the same behavior. If you want me to continue mentoring him, you need to address his attitude now. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to end this. Devin's jaw tightened. Fine, I'll talk to him, but I don't appreciate the insinuation that I'm endorsing his rudeness. He exhaled. I hired you for your professional skills, Chris, so be professional, show him how to work, and let me handle the parenting. I forced a nod. Thank you. I hope it improves. Then I limped out, heart pounding. I'd called him out in a way, but his reaction was defensive. This was going to get worse, I could tell. The next day, Carter showed up with an even bigger chip on his shoulder. He avoided me most of the morning, and I was relieved. Then Ebony forwarded me an email from him that read, Mr. Jenkins wants me to redo these slides? That's stupid. The slides are fine. He's just too slow to keep up with my design ideas. Ebony responded politely, but it was clear Carter was venting. Ebony said, "Kid's a brat. Sorry you're stuck with him." After lunch, I found Carter slouched at my desk. He had propped his feet up on a nearby chair. As I approached, cane tapping on the floor, he smirked. "Dad gave me a lecture about respecting you," he said, rolling his eyes. "Said something about your disability not defining you, blah blah. Happy now?" I inhaled slowly, trying to keep calm. "This isn't about me being happy. It's about professional conduct. Now, did you fix those slides?" Carter shrugged. "Maybe. Are you going to fail me if I say no?" I gave him a stern look. "I don't want to fail you, Carter. I want you to learn. If you just do the tasks." He cut me off. "You're not my teacher, old man." A sneer twisted his lips. "I'm only here because Dad forced me. Honestly, I don't care about spreadsheets or your limp or any of this." He hopped up, strolling away. I stood there, shaking with anger. Old man? He was upping the hostility daily. Ebony overheard some of it, he coming over with a worried expression. "That's it," she said. "We should talk to HR. This is harassment, plain and simple." But I hesitated again. Devin had made it clear he wanted me to handle it. If I went to HR, I risked a direct confrontation with him. On the other hand, Carter's behavior was toxic, possibly violating company policy. Ebony was right. "I'll give Devin one last chance to fix this," I said. "If it doesn't stop, we're going to HR." Ebony nodded, concern in her eyes. At the end of the day, I mustered my courage and marched to Devin's office again. He was on a call, but I waited. When he finished, I closed the door behind me. "Devin, we have a problem," I said, voice trembling with pent-up frustration. "Carter's openly disrespectful. He insulted me again today. If you don't intervene effectively, I'll file a complaint." Devin's face hardened. He told me his side. Claims you're micromanaging him and criticizing him unfairly, maybe if you cut him some slack. "This isn't about me being tough on him," I snapped. "He's calling me names, referencing my disability. That's harassment, Devin. I'm asking you to put a stop to it." He rubbed his temples. All right. I'll talk to him again. But keep in mind, Chris, if you escalate this, it'll be messy for everyone. HR might decide we no longer need this mentorship or your involvement. It'd be a shame if that overshadowed your excellent performance." I glared. "Is that a threat?" He held up his hands, feigning innocence. "No, just stating the reality. HR hates drama. If Carter's causing a problem, they might terminate the mentorship. Then guess who looks like they can't handle an intern? Let's just solve this quietly." My blood boiled. "Fine," I bit out, turning to leave. "But if Carter does anything else, I'm out." The next day, I arrived to find an email from Carter, CC'd to Devin. Subject, mentorship issues. "Mr. Jenkins is constantly criticizing me and making me redo tasks. He also leaves me idle for hours with nothing to do, then blames me for not working. It's confusing. Please advise on what I should do. Regards, Carter Bradley." My jaw dropped. This was a blatant lie. Ebony shook her head in disgust. "He's flipping the script, making you look bad." Checking timestamps, I saw Carter sent it at 2 a.m., probably after stewing over Devin's lecture. Before I could respond, Devin summoned us both to a mediation in his office. Carter sat with his arms folded, glaring. I explained calmly that I gave Carter tasks, but he refused to do them properly. He mocked me, etc. Carter denied everything, claiming I was unapproachable and that Ebony was the one who disliked him. Devin frowned, saying, "We need a solution, folks. Chris, maybe you can be more flexible. Let Carter pick tasks he's interested in. Carter, you need to shape up and show respect." Carter rolled his eyes. "Whatever." I pressed my lips into a thin line. "I'm trying, but I can't ignore the insults." Devin sighed. "Carter, apologize." Carter shrugged. "Fine. I'm sorry if I said something that offended you." The most insincere apology ever. Devin turned to me. "There, see? Let's move on. Chris, give Carter some tasks aligned with his interests, maybe more creative stuff." I clenched my fists under the table. "All right, but if he crosses the line again, I'm out." Carter smirked. "Deal." Over the weekend, I tried to decompress, spent time with my sister's family, played board games with my nephew, but I couldn't shake the stress about Carter and Devin. My limp felt worse. Stress often exacerbates my muscle tension. My sister noticed, asking if everything was okay. I told her a bit, and she was horrified. "You shouldn't have to endure that. Don't let them push you around." I nodded, hugging her goodbye. Monday, I returned with a plan to stand my ground. If Carter stepped out of line, I'd walk away and let HR handle the rest. Sure enough, he arrived late Monday, waltzed to my desk, and said, "Dad said you have new fun tasks for me." So, I'd prepared a sample project analyzing social media trends for a hypothetical marketing pitch, something a teen might find interesting. I explained it, gave him creative freedom to interpret the data visually. At first, he was dismissive, but once I mentioned social media metrics, he perked up. "So I can look at real trends on Twitter and Instagram?" I nodded. "Yes, but watch your personal usage. Keep it professional. If you do well, we can show Ebony and maybe incorporate it into a future client pitch." Carter shrugged. "Fine, I'll do it." He pulled up a seat, started tapping away. For the next hour, I glimpsed occasional progress. He was actually analyzing hashtags, capturing data into a spreadsheet. I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe this would go smoothly. Then Ebony swung by, curious about Carter's shift in attitude. She offered some tips. Carter responded politely enough. I exhaled, thinking perhaps we'd finally found common ground. Maybe Devin was right, and he just needed something that caught his interest. By lunchtime, Carter had compiled a rough draft of interesting data. I offered constructive feedback. He didn't bristle. My spirit lifted. "Good job, Carter. Keep refining." He nodded, eyes glimmering with a hint of pride. "I guess this is kind of cool," he admitted. After lunch, Ebony and I got pulled into another urgent client call. I told Carter to keep refining until I returned. He said, "Sure, no problem." The call lasted almost 2 hours, a tough negotiation. Finally, Ebony and I emerged, exhausted. I checked Carter's workstation. He was gone, only his backpack left. Puzzled, I texted him, "Where are you?" No reply. I asked the receptionist, who said he left with a friend about 15 minutes ago. Strange. Did Devin approve it? Shortly after, Ebony shouted from her computer, "Chris, come see this." She pointed to an email from Carter, sent to several folks in the department, including me, Ebony, and unfortunately, some random external mailing list. The subject line was, "Check out this trending meme." Attached was a mocking meme featuring a cartoon figure with a cane, tripping and dropping papers, with a caption reading, "When your boss says, walk it off." Ebony's eyes blazed with fury. He just blasted a disability joke to half the office. Shock and humiliation crashed over me. My cheeks burned. Some folks in the CC line were clients or external partners. This was beyond unprofessional. It was an outright cruel dig. Ebony muttered curses under her breath. I just stared at the screen, numb. My old high school nightmares returning full force. Within minutes, the email triggered a flurry of shocked replies. Some colleagues wrote, "This is inappropriate, Carter." Others didn't reply at all, probably uncomfortable. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Dude, sorry about that email. Carter said it was an accident." Another text from a friend in another department. "WTF is your intern thinking?" I swallowed, feeling nauseated. Ebony put a hand on my shoulder. "We go to HR now, right?" She was near tears with anger on my behalf. I nodded, shaky but resolute. "Yes, that's it. This time, it's official." I forwarded the email to HR, writing a concise complaint about harassment. Ebony did the same. Then I went to the HR manager, Miss Garcia, in person. She was outraged, immediately calling a meeting for the next morning. Ebony offered to come as a witness. I said yes, grateful for her support. I left early that day, my leg throbbing, my head pounding. On the drive home, I replayed the humiliation in my mind. A silly cartoon or meme shouldn't devastate me like this. But it did. It triggered all those old wounds from high school. That was exactly the type of joke Devin used to make pictures of me with exaggerated crutches or canes pinned to the lockers. How could Carter stoop so low? My anger gave way to sadness. Why did I have to keep fighting the same battle? The HR meeting took place at 10 a.m. the next day. Miss Garcia had arranged for me, Ebony, and Carter to attend. Devin was notably absent. Miss Garcia said, "I've asked Miss Bradley if he wanted to be here, but as Carter's father and your direct supervisor, that might complicate matters." He declined, saying we should handle the mentorship issue with Carter directly. Ebony and I exchanged glances. Typical Devin dodging responsibility. Carter walked in, hands in his pockets, looking sullen. Ms. Garcia wasted no time. "Carter, we have a serious issue. You sent an email to multiple employees and external parties containing a disparaging meme referencing disability. That violates our harassment policies." Carter tried an innocent look. "It was a joke, not meant to harass anyone specifically. I was just messing around with memes. I accidentally hit reply all. Didn't realize external folks were CC'd. Ms. Garcia's lips thinned. Regardless of your intent, it targeted a physical disability. We do not tolerate such behavior. Additionally, you included an image referencing your mentor's cane, which strongly implies it was directed at Mr. Jenkins. Carter shrugged. I guess I see how it's offensive, but I didn't name him. I mean, it's just a random meme. Ebony jumped in. Stop lying. Stop lying. Everyone knows who it referred to. He's the only person in this office who uses a cane. She glared. Ms. Garcia nodded. It's quite clear it was aimed at Mr. Jenkins. Carter, this is a major violation. Normally, for an employee, this could lead to termination, but you're a minor in a mentorship. We must decide how to proceed. Carter's face paled. Terminated from the mentorship? But I need the hours for my project. My dad will be pissed. I found my voice. Your father's the one who put us in this situation. I've tried to mentor you. You've been disrespectful and now crossed a line. I'm done. I can't continue teaching you while you harass me. Ms. Garcia nodded gravely. Mr. Jenkins has every right to refuse. Carter, your behavior is unacceptable. Ebony placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. So the mentorship ends here, right? Carter's eyes flicked with panic. Wait, no, you can't. Dad said I have to finish or else I won't get the credit. Please, can we work something out? I'll apologize. Ebony scoffed. An apology? You've apologized before and then you turned around and did worse. Miss Garcia sighed. This is complicated by the fact that your father is in senior leadership, Carter. Typically, we'd remove you from the program, but I must consult with the corporate office to ensure protocol is followed. For now, you're suspended from the mentorship. You won't be returning to the office until we have a final decision. Carter's mouth dropped open. But, Ms. Garcia raised a hand, this isn't up for debate. Gather your things. You'll be escorted out by security. We'll contact you with next steps. I watched Carter's face shift from anger to fear. He tried to plead. Mr. Jenkins, I didn't mean. I just shook my head, exhausted. Security arrived and Carter left, shoulders slumped. Ebony exhaled. Good riddance. Ms. Garcia thanked me for coming forward, apologized for my ordeal, and assured me they'd handle any blowback from Devon. If you experience retaliation, come to me immediately, she said firmly. I nodded, relief and anxiety mingling in my chest. The official route had been taken. Now we'd see what Devon would do. Sure enough, Devon was furious. Later that afternoon, I got a message from him. Meet in my office now. I grabbed Ebony for moral support, but he insisted it be one-on-one. I entered to find him standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He turned, anger etched on his face. My son just told me he got kicked out of the mentorship, he said in a low voice. Care to explain? I stood tall, though my leg trembled. He sent a harassing email about my disability to coworkers and external contacts. HR found it a major violation. I refused to continue mentoring him. Devon glared. I told you to handle this quietly, Chris. Now HR's involved, Carter's humiliated, and I'm dealing with corporate fallout. His fists tightened. You couldn't cut him some slack? He's just a kid. My temper flared. A kid who repeatedly insulted me, culminating in a mass email mocking my disability. That's beyond kid stuff. I gave you countless chances to correct him, but he escalated. He jabbed a finger at me. Let's not pretend you didn't have a chip on your shoulder from day one. You never forgave me for high school, so you took it out on Carter. This is revenge, plain and simple. I recoiled, shocked. Revenge? You think I wanted your son to publicly humiliate me? I asked you multiple times to rein him in. This is on him and on you. Devon's face twisted with rage. I can't believe you jeopardize his future over some jokes, and you've tarnished my reputation. The CFO got wind of this fiasco. I had to explain why my own son is mocking a team lead. He shook his head. Corporate is not happy. They're questioning my oversight. I let out a bitter laugh. So you blame me for your failure to discipline your son? That's rich. Devon stabbed the air with his hand. Don't push me, Chris. The bottom line is, we need to salvage this. Corporate might cut the mentorship program entirely. They could also question your leadership if they see you as a troublemaker. I took a step forward, cane clicking. Troublemaker? I've been a top performer. You said so yourself. Don't threaten me because of your son's actions. I have HR's backing. If you try to retaliate, that's illegal. He clenched his jaw. For a moment, I thought he might lash out physically, but he just turned away, breathing hard. After a tense silence, he spoke in a calmer, icy tone. Fine. We'll see what corporate decides. But don't expect me to go easy on you or your department going forward. I swallowed. Understood, I said softly, turning to leave. My leg throbbed from the tension. As I reached the door, he threw one last jab. You think you've won, but mark my words. Chris, you keep poking me. You'll regret it. That night, I barely slept. Anxiety gnawed at me. Ebony tried to reassure me the next morning, reminding me HR was on my side. But Devin was now a ticking time bomb. Over the next couple weeks, he instituted new budget cuts, demanded endless reports from my team, criticized minor details in my proposals. Ebony and I saw it for what it was, retaliation. We documented everything, in case we needed to present a pattern of harassment. Meanwhile, Carter was out of the picture. Word around the office was that he might not get credit for his mentorship. Some speculated he'd have to redo the program elsewhere. A few coworkers quietly told me how sorry they were about the entire fiasco and that they supported me. Others kept their distance, not wanting to cross Devin. One afternoon, Ms. Garcia from HR pulled me aside. Corporate concluded their review of the mentorship fiasco, she said. They support HR's decision to end Carter's mentorship. No blowback on you. Officially, you're cleared. Relief washed over me, but she continued. However, they're aware of tension with Devin. Keep documenting if you feel he's creating a hostile environment. If it continues, we can escalate further. I thanked her. That was a small victory, though I still felt uneasy. At least I wouldn't be forced to mentor Carter again. But Devin's subtle hostility lingered. Late-night emails demanding reworks, last-minute schedule changes, a sense that he was waiting for me to slip up. Surprisingly, the final resolution didn't come from HR or corporate. It came from Carter himself. About a month after the fiasco, on a quiet Friday afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor at my desk. Carter. He looked different, disheveled, eyes red like he'd been crying. My heart lurched with a mixture of anger and pity. Ebony, who sat nearby, tensed, ready to intervene. I raised my eyebrows. Carter, you're not supposed to be here? Are you with your father? He shook his head, biting his lip. I snuck up in the elevator. He doesn't know I'm here. Ebony folded her arms, glaring. You have a lot of nerve showing up after what you pulled. Carter winced. I know, Ms. Ebony. I'm sorry. I need to talk to Mr. Jenkins, Chris. Please. I studied his face. He looked genuinely distressed. Ebony nodded once, letting me decide. With a sigh, I said, all right, let's step into a conference room. I walked carefully with my cane, Ebony trailing us protectively. We took seats around a small table. Carter fiddled with his sleeves, avoiding eye contact. All right, I said stiffly. What do you want? He took a shaky breath. I messed up, really bad. I know I was a jerk. I guess I was angry. My dad forced me to do the mentorship. My mom and dad's divorce sucks, and I lashed out, but I never wanted it to blow up like this. I kept my face neutral. You mocked my disability publicly. That's not a small mistake. People were hurt, including me. Carter's eyes grew wet. I know. I'm really sorry. I was being an idiot, trying to be cool or something. My dad, well, he always told me some story about you from high school, how you were a slowpoke or whatever. I guess I thought it was funny, but after everything, I realize it's not. I felt Ebony bristle next to me, but I just breathed evenly. So your dad told you to mock me? Carter shook his head vehemently. No, not directly. But he'd make jokes sometimes, like when he was drunk. He'd say stuff like you used to limp around school and it annoyed him. He'd laugh about how he teased you back then, so I thought, maybe that's normal. But seeing how it played out and how upset everyone got, I realized it's not normal or okay. My anger flared, but also a strange sadness. Devin was basically teaching his son that harassing me was a family tradition. Carter wiped his eyes. Anyway, I came here because I wanted to apologize to you in person. My dad told me not to, but I had to. I can't stand living with this guilt. I wrote a letter too. He rummaged in his pocket, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, handed it over. Ebony stared, suspicious. I unfolded it. In shaky handwriting, Carter wrote a long apology, acknowledging he singled me out for my disability, that it was cruel and he was sorry. He said he understood if I never forgave him, but he wanted me to know he's trying to change. My throat tightened. I glanced at Ebony. She seemed taken aback by the sincerity. Carter sniffed. I know an apology doesn't fix what I did, but if there's anything I can do, I will. And I'm sorry if Dad's been awful to you. He's always complaining about you at home, but I think that's more about his own issues. He shrugged. Anyway, that's all. I just wanted to say sorry. I'll go now. He stood to leave. Ebony looked at me questioningly. I pressed a hand to my temple, emotions swirling. Finally, I said quietly, Carter, wait. He paused. Your letter? Thanks for writing it. I appreciate the honesty. As you said, it won't fix everything right away, but it's a step. He nodded, tears brimming. I let out a shaky sigh. I hope you learn from this. Harassment has real consequences. I'm still dealing with them, but if you're sincere, that matters. Thank you. Carter swallowed hard. I am sincere. I guess I'll go. Sorry again. He left the room, Ebony and I exchanging looks of astonishment. I felt a small weight lift from my chest. It didn't undo the hurt, but it was something, maybe a glimmer of hope, that the cycle of bullying could end. Ebony squeezed my arm. You okay? I exhaled. Yeah, I think so. Surprised, but okay. We found out later that Carter had also gone to Ms. Garcia and repeated his apology, handing her a copy of the letter. He asked if there was any chance he could complete his mentorship hours elsewhere. She said she'd see if another department was willing, but that'd be a separate decision. The bottom line was he accepted responsibility. It was more than Devin ever did. Devin, of course, was furious when he learned Carter snuck in to apologize. He stormed over to my desk, demanding to know what Carter said. Ebony hovered nearby in case he got aggressive. I calmly told Devin the gist of Carter's words. Devin scoffed. He's naive. You're just milking this for sympathy. Ebony stepped forward, bristling. That's enough, Mr. Bradley. Carter apologized of his own free will. If you keep harassing Chris, we'll involve HR again. Devin glared at her, then me, then stomped away, cursing under his breath. That was the last real confrontation. In the weeks that followed, Carter didn't return. Ms. Garcia told me he'd do a fresh mentorship at a different company that had no ties to Devin. Meanwhile, Devin eased off my department slightly, perhaps because corporate was watching, or maybe because he realized he was fighting a losing battle. Ebony and I resumed our normal routines, focusing on client work. I never became buddy-buddy with Devin. Our working relationship stayed frosty, but functional. He stopped making subtle threats, likely because HR had an eye on him. I made sure to keep thorough documentation of all interactions, just in case. Over time, I found some measure of peace. 6 months later, I received a letter at the office. The return address was from Carter, but it wasn't an apology note. It was a short update. He'd completed his mentorship at a local startup, learned some coding, and realized he actually enjoyed data analysis. I guess I see what you and Ebony were trying to teach me, he wrote. Thanks for not giving up on me right away, even though I was a jerk. I'm still sorry about everything. He also mentioned that he'd had a big argument with Devin about the fiasco, telling his dad to stop pressuring him to mock people for fun. They were still rocky, but Carter was living primarily with his mom now. The letter ended with, if we cross paths again, I promise to be better. Take care. I read it twice, feeling a strange sense of closure. Ebony teased me. You going to write back? I shook my head. Not sure yet. I might just let it stand as is. It's good to know some progress happened. My limp was still there, of course, it always would be. But the emotional limp left by bullying felt a bit lighter. I never needed to be friends with Carter or Devin. I just needed to know that the cycle of cruelty wasn't inevitable. Carter's apology was proof that even a bully's son, raised in an environment of mockery, could learn empathy if confronted with the consequences of his actions. A year after that, Ebony and I were recognized at the company's annual awards ceremony for leading a groundbreaking analytics project. Devin, still the regional director, had no choice but to present the awards. He gave a stiff handshake and a forced smile, but I saw the resentment in his eyes. I didn't care. I accepted the recognition with quiet pride. My cane tapped the stage, but this time I felt no shame. I'd earned my place, despite the obstacles. Afterward, Ebony and I clinked glasses of sparkling cider at the reception. Cheers to us and to shutting down bullies, she said with a grin. Cheers, I echoed, smiling, and here's to never mentoring Devon's kid again. We laughed. The memory of Carter's sneering face still stung, but it was overshadowed by the knowledge that I stood up for myself, forced accountability, and even saw a spark of redemption in that kid. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Devin remained a difficult boss. and I stayed cautious, always mindful of potential retaliation. But the darkest chapter closed when Carter walked out that door and later apologized, breaking the cycle of cruelty that Devin started all those years ago. In the end, I found strength in defending my dignity. I realized that my disability, once the source of so much teasing, had also forged my resilience. I may walk with a cane, but I walk tall, proud of the challenges I've overcome, unafraid to confront bullies, even if they become my boss. Carter inadvertently taught me that change is possible, if only someone stands up and refuses to accept abuse. And that, I think, is the best legacy from a mentorship that started so badly and ended so unexpectedly. We all learned what real respect looks like and what it doesn't.